Good afternoon, and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where for 97 years, issues of the day, whether it be in politics, business, education, healthcare, our culture, or many other topics, have been discussed and debated. My name is Jan Roller, and I am president of the club. We are very fortunate to have with us today one of the true giants, may I say legends, of the broadcasting industry. His career in radio and television has spanned 50 years. Bill Baker is the son of a Cleveland factory worker, and although he gained a Ph.D. from Case Western Reserve University in industrial psychology, he says he didn't use the degree, initially at least, because by the time he received it, he was running a television station here in Cleveland. But events took him east, where he rose to become head of Westinghouse Broadcasting and president of public television in New York. He has been an integral part of producing some of television's most respected and popular programs, including Bill Moyer's Journal, Charlie Rose, Nature, Cyber Chase, and Great Performances. And he also discovered and is credited with starting the career of a young talk show host by the name of Oprah Winfrey. Mr. Baker has won numerous awards, including 7 Emmys and 2 Columbia DuPont Journalism Awards. He has returned to his academic roots and is now a professor at Fordham University and at the Business School at Columbia and at the IESE Business School in Barcelona, Spain. He is here today in partnership with IdeaStream to talk about his book, Leading with Kindness, How Good People Consistently Get Superior Results, which is also a 1-hour documentary and was shown last night on PBS. It features 5 examples of companies who lead with kindness, such as Google, Pitney Bowes, and Eileen Fisher Clothing. Mr. Baker, it's indeed an honor to have you with us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bill Baker.
Thanks, Jan. It's really great being here in my hometown. I'd also like to say that I'm especially honored to be here with my friends from IdeaStream, WVIZ and WCPN. Kit Jensen and Jerry Wareham are 2 of the finest public television and radio executives in America, and Cleveland is very fortunate to have them. And since they didn't pay for me to come, I can say that with all sincerity. Also, of course, to be here at my the place where I got 3 degrees from Case Western Reserve and served on the board for 10 years, another incredible Cleveland institution. So I feel good about that. And then none of my family members could come, but my best friend, Alan Glason, who's probably the smartest guy I know, showed up. So, Alan, thank you for coming too. This subject, this book, the journey that led me to write Leading with Kindness, actually started here in Cleveland probably 35 years ago. The mid-'70s were a rather dynamic and expansionist time for the television industry, and Cleveland was one of the hottest places. A lot of the top managers at stations and networks attributed the immense success of their companies, and even that of TV in general, to their own personal genius and judgment and drive. My own bosses were no exception. They either neglected or actively avoided giving respect and encouragement to the people who worked for them and ultimately supported them. I remember a Christmas party here in Cleveland where the managers thought it was appropriate to, in genuine malice and bad taste and in full view of the rest of the employees attending, to ridicule their peers. Well, I figured I could have been next. The titles I've since given to such managers are bully bosses, imperious bosses, or just plain nasty people. My wife, Jean Marie, another native Clevelander and now a nurse practitioner and family systems expert, wisely said, I should move on. And she was right, but I didn't really want to leave Cleveland. I loved it and still love my hometown. My family and friends were here, my alma mater, Case Western was here. But I finally agreed with her that a professional environment poisoned by unkind leadership was no place to build my future. My wife's advice was not only wise, but it was supported by everything that I had learned while getting my Ph.D. in communications and organizational behavior. All of the research and academic literature I encountered showed that companies really were more successful when they treated their employees with caring and respect. So Jean Marie and I left Cleveland, and we went on to Baltimore, to Hollywood, and then finally to New York about 30-some years ago. There were plenty of bad bosses along the way. I don't mean to imply that Cleveland has bad bosses and other places don't. They are everywhere. As a matter of fact, in the early days of my career, and maybe even the later days, I was probably one as well. I had one of my communications people, when I was at Westinghouse, wrote this book called Crazy Bosses, and I think I was in it. But I remembered my education, I remembered my research, and the more responsibility that I acquired, the more I remembered to respect those without whom I wouldn't have been successful. Whenever somebody helped grow my career, I did my best to help grow theirs in return. The results of this strategy haven't always been ideal. But looking back at 50 years in the TV business, they've been overwhelmingly positive. It's really the golden rule. Give people respect and honest encouragement, and they will do well. Sometimes they'll astonish you. When I retired from the TV business, I decided to write a book about what I'd learned. I was also fortunate to find a fellow Clevelander and Case Western alum, Michael O'Malley, now a management professor at Yale, to write the book with. And at the start of the book, I learned, though my assumption was still sound, there had been a lot of research done since I got my Ph.D. 40 years ago, some rather fascinating. Much of the research has changed recently, and it's gone from what we call top-down management models, where all of the early management books were how the boss should behave, to now more servant leadership models and what they call, there are a couple big movements in the field now, servant leadership and authentic leadership, looking more at from the employees and the workers level up rather than from the management level down. Of course, there have been some incredibly fine books in management written, one by Jim Collins called Good to Great, which has to always be mentioned. There's also some very recent research, and it's so recent it's not in my book, but I thought it was kind of interesting that I wanted to mention. One in a paper titled When the Boss Feels Inadequate. This has to do with these terrible times that we're living in right now. This is written by psychologists Chen of UC Berkeley and Fast of the University of Southern California. They argue that leaders who are in over their heads tend to resort to browbeating to protect their egos. Simply, these leaders are insecure, so that what do they become? They become bully bosses. If people feel incompetent and they happen to be in high-powered positions, that's when the aggression kicks in, Fast said. Power has its downside. It elevates the standards by which people are judged and can make them less secure to the degree that they feel inadequate. That's one of the factors. The BBC reported just recently a study that was done. These issues are all over the world. They're not just in America, I might add. Obviously, leadership and management are worldwide issues. At the Cranfield School of Management, which I think is in England, the BBC reported that the researchers there determined there's greater burnout in middle managers these days when they're squeezed by sometimes unrealistic demands of the board and the CEO, while reports from the line workers to these managers indicate the requests are impossible or unworkable. These middle managers think that they would be unloyal if they tell the CEO the plan won't work and yet can't respond to line workers about their concerns and fears. Hence, they often themselves become bullies. Now, bullying, according to these researchers in England, is on the increase. Well, that makes a lot of sense, and that's really something rather sad.